Good morning, doctor. My name is Hashveny. My metric number is 259021. Today, my group will represent about one of the economically developed country, which is known as Egypt. To determine the well-being of Egypt's economy, used indicator is GDP. So, from the graph of GDP growth rate from 2009 to 2021, the 2011 the rate dropped drastically to 1.77% from previous year because that time the economy slowed down and brought down the president of President of Egypt Hosni Mubarak regime, and it harmed the development, tourism, and also the manufacturing. In 2018, the rate increased 5.31% because of the high service sectors in that year, and followed by 2019, 5.56%, which is the highest rate among the 10 years after balancing the inflation, and is sustained until the beginning of 2020. The poverty rate in Egypt also increased that in year 2017 fiscal year 22.5. So Egypt introduced a wave of reforms into focusing on cutting the red tape where it allowed to expand the productive sector and decrease the poverty rate. So in financial crisis, Egypt suffers worse since Great Depression 1930s, where the stock markets dropped because of the foreign investors trying to sell their shares quickly, and this makes the Egypt pound rapid devaluation. And from that, main problem occurs where the food price doubled up and the cooking gas less and also fuel less, and makes the quarter of the family at that time spend half of their income only on the food. So inflation rate increase and the pound value decrease, and the foreign import goods all become expensive. So in end of February 2020, foreign reserves are at the safe range, and in March 2020, Egypt allocates some money for emergency purpose to fight the COVID-19 pandemic in the Egypt at that time. Now I will pass to my friend. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and greeting well. My name is Mohamad Izwan bin Mohamad and my metric number is 256051. As we know, Egypt has frequent international monetary funds visit because they are in financial trouble. The Comprehensive Economic Reform Program has been supported by the Extended Fund Facility, which aim at returning Egypt to effective and sustainable growth as well as restore macroeconomic stability. In 2016, the fixed exchange rate, weak monetary policy, and large budget deficits had led to a huge reduction of foreign exchange reserve, high amount of public debt, and high inflation. Besides, unemployment increased, causing a decline in growth. The IMF also addresses the corruption issue considered to be prevalent in Egypt. Recent issues involving the IMF are related to the pandemic shock, which poses severe economic disruption that give negative impact to Egypt's macroeconomic stability. Lately, the IMF's Executive Board Financial Assistance authorized a request for funds from Egypt which known as emergency support. The COVID-19 pandemic has radically disrupted the lives, economic conditions as well as livelihoods of Egypt people. After that, we go to the major economic events of Egypt. For the first one, import substitution and nationalization 1952 until 1966, during which the first program in 1957 were led by the public sector in heavy industries, which reduced the relative importance of the private sector. After that, in the war 1967 until 1973 adversely affected the performance of Egypt economy and public sector role in import substitution, and then the opponents European 1974 until 1985, during which the policy were introduced to encourage Arab and foreign investment through a series of incentives. And then the next, the external debt crisis 1985 until 1990. The external debt crisis and Paris Club rescheduling and debt reduction. And then the economic reform 1991 until 2007. Reform policies were introduced to meet the terms of international institutions, lenders, and donors. Furthermore, the post-global financial crisis 2008 until 2011, soaring food prices, especially for grains. And then for the last one, the post-revolution 2012 until 2016. Egypt's foreign exchange reserve fell from December 2010 to January 2012. In 2016, Egypt floated its currency and embarked a home-ground economic reform program supported by IMF loan. By early 2019, Egypt had received 10 of the 12 billion requested.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Nurul Salim, number metric 255915. I will talk about the regime change or coalition government of Egypt their ruling party and how often there are change in their governments. For Egypt, there is a regime change to the elimination of Hosni Mubarak during the Egyptian Revolution of 2011 and replaced with Mohamad Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood that marked the success of democracy. There is no coalition government for Egypt, but during the 2011 revolution, there is one time before Mohamad Morsi take a place as the president, Egypt was ruled by Supreme Councils of the Armed Force. There is some opinion and individual points that they said that was a coalition government, since they are appointing a government at that time. Government is the one who ruling the Egypt, and it based on republic with the semi-presidential system with the current president Abdul al-Sisi. For Egypt, they will have new election every 6 years after one person ruling the country. They used to run system with a voting method. Next, I will continue with the internal original crisis of Egypt. First, we look at Egyptian Revolution 2011 crisis, or also called as January 25 Revolution, because it happened from 25 January 2011, where it is all about protests, civil disobedient acts, and also street demonstration. The main purpose of the protests are to overthrow President Hosni Mubarak regimes. This is because under the regime, many problems appear at the time that make them to do this action. They start the demonstration and riots over unemployment issue, police brutality, lack of freedom of speech, minimum wage, poor living condition, and also corruption. Next crisis is the continuance of the Egyptian Revolution 2011 effect, because there was an ongoing terrorist attack they called Sinai terrorist attack, which happened in Sinai Peninsula, Egypt, initiated by Islamic militants against Egyptian security force, which include the attack on civilians. Egypt also faced some environmental issue problems such as water issue and lack of waste management system. That's all from me. Thank you.
My name is Nurul Atikah, Binti Abdul Latif 255922. Alright, today I would like to present about my part, which is the impact of China's Belt and Road on Egypt country. The first impact of China's Belt and Road on Egypt country is the trade volume between Egypt and China increased to $10.8 billion in 2017. After that, in terms of investment, that China have direct investment on Egypt reached to $2,060 million. For the infrastructure, Egyptian and Chinese have a good cooperation, which is Chinese company has implementing the first electric train in Egypt for the facilitate movement. Then Chinese company, which is Taib, have invest $100 million to Egypt for the facilitate on Chinese-Egyptian cooperation zone. Then other Chinese company, which is Jushi Group, they invest $600 million for the infrastructure. Alright, for the last part, which is anti-money laundering (AML) in Egypt. In 2002, the Egyptian government has enacted the Combating Money Laundering, which is CML, to prevent the financial crime. After that, they have created a money laundering combating unit, which is MLCU, under the CML law. Then in 2019, they have a Financial Regulatory Authority, which is FRA, for auditing and regulating non-financial institution, to make sure that non-financial institution also will be protected from financial crime. After that, the Central Bank of Egyptian has created some obligation with bank operating to prevent financial crimes. Alright, the location that may pose the higher risk for doing business in Egypt is the location that other than free zone location in Egypt.